Hello.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the monthly marketing meeting teleconference provided by the Marketing Wizards Alliance. I'm your host, as always, Marketing Wizard Jim Ackerman, always striving to help you get more customers who will pay you more money more often, the fastest, easiest, most cost-effective ways possible. And welcome in. We have a special guest today, Joe Nicassio. Let me tell you a little bit about Joe. We met, a long time ago, Joe. It's probably 12 or 15 years now, isn't it? Met as a result of both attending a J. Abraham conference, and it wasn't long after that Joe became one of our principal-centered marketing coaches and is the longest standing, other than me, the longest-standing principal-centered marketing coach that we have. Joe's a terrific marketer in his own right, an excellent copywriter, and has now written the book, Resurrecting America's Entrepreneurial Spirit, which is off to a good start. And the subtitle of the book is A Practical Approach for Creating Jobs. And I recognize that not everybody on this call is in the create job mode, at least not right now. But we are talking about entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial spirit. And in the long run, and I've learned this myself, having tried business several different ways, if we're going to truly be entrepreneurs and not just business people who own a job, we're going to have to get into a position where we realize that different facets of our work need to be systemized and passed off to other people to give us the kind of freedom as well as income opportunity that we got into business for in the first place. Most of us on the call do have employees, ranging from 1 or 2 all the way up to 10 or 12 probably, but and in some cases even more. But the idea here is that regardless of where you stand from the perspective of being in the position to hire somebody right now, you're probably going to need to outsource something sooner or later. That provides employment for other people. But this is not a job discussion. This is a discussion about the entrepreneurial spirit and what's trying to kill it in America today and ways around that. So let me just say a couple more words about Joe himself. He's a master practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming. He's had the opportunity and good fortune to be personally mentored by some of America's finest marketing practitioners beyond myself. Some of his credits include J. Abraham, Michael Levine, Jim Rohn, Tom Hopkins, Dan Kennedy, Joe Sugarman, and more. And he's taken all that he's learned from these masters and combined the best of the best into his own distinctive style of marketing. And Joe is just, like I say, one of our best marketing coaches, certainly the one that's been with us the longest period of time, which I think says something for his belief in the system as well. So, without any further ado, then, let's drop into the book, and let's talk about it, Joe, in terms of how it can help the folks that are on the line be more successful in their own enterprises. First of all, why'd you write the book?
The reason I wrote this book was I was inspired. I was asked to give a presentation to a group of about 50 people. This was probably a decade ago, 8 or 9 years ago at least. And the room, there was 50 people in the room, and they all had bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, or PhDs. And there was a tremendous amount of brain power in this room. But they all had one thing in common. They were all unemployed. And I asked the question, how many of you would like to own your own business? And about 60% of the hands went up. Now, this is a little surprising to me since all these people were seeking some kind of opportunity to make a living. And I asked a follow-up question, and that was, how many of you are afraid of starting your own business? And almost every hand in the room went up. And some kind of seed was planted in my brain, like, wow, this is America where anybody can start their own business, and yet I have some of the most bright people in one room, and they're all afraid of starting their own business. And I would say that was a big inspiration. Now, recently, a couple years ago, we had a pretty big economic crash, if you will, and I hear all the politicians saying, well, where do the jobs come from? Where do the jobs come from? And as you know, like you just said, I've been a marketing coach, and I've worked with business owners, and, you know, when you come in and you start helping them with their marketing and their marketing grows, they end up creating jobs. You know, for example, I worked with a security guard company, and he had one customer that was paying him $3,000 a month. And he came to me and said, Joe, I want more customers. I said, well, have you thought about getting more business from your one customer? He said, no. I said, well, why don't you go back and ask, would you like to go ask your one customer if they have any more work for you? Well, they gave him 7 more yards at $3,000 apiece, which gave him 7 more. It created 7 jobs, and it took his income from $3,000 a month to $24,000 a month in less than 30 days. So that's just one example. Today, that same company has over 50 full-time and 200 part-time employees because we grew his marketing. So I saw a direct correlation between when your business grows, jobs are created.
Yeah, let me jump in for just a minute, Joe, because everybody on the line should pay attention to that story. You've heard it from me many times. You know, if you want your customers to do more business with you, if you want them to come back and buy more often, you've got to ask. What a tremendous marketing strategy. I mean, Joe, how much money did this guy spend on a fancy brochure or television advertising or direct mail to get his existing one customer to increase business with him by a factor of 7?
Pretty much nothing. I mean, at the time, I think he retained me for a couple $1,000, and you know, he's at the 60. He's actually making close to $100K a month now. But yeah,
the brilliant part is, he retains Joe for a couple of grand, and Joe says, go ask a guy if he has more work for you. Now, how's that for rocket science? But the message here is, gang, if we want to create jobs, if we want to create increased income for ourselves, probably the best place to start is going to our existing customer base. Okay, Joe, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
Well, so that was just a large inspiration for the book. You know, we live in a time now where we have people marching on Occupy Wall Street saying, where are the jobs? And we have politicians saying, well, we can create jobs by adjusting the tax code. And I'm saying, well, maybe if you just improve your marketing. But anyway, so I was in this position to write a book, and it was, you know, what do I write my book on exactly? Because really, I had to kind of pray about this. What's exactly the right thing? And it came to me that the spirit, the entrepreneurial spirit, is not alive for everybody in this country. Some have it, and some don't. And I realized that there was just a serious problem, and I wrote this book to basically be a ray of hope for people to help overcome the challenges that stop people from having their own business.
Okay, well, good. That's a good place to start. Now, one of the things that I think most of the people that are on the line are challenged with is the economy. And, of course, the economy, as you pointed out, you said a crash, if you will. I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that the crash was a superior crash. You know, the argument is it was if you listen to the Obama administration, it's the worst depression or worst recession since the Great Depression. You know, I lived through the Carter years, so I might argue with that. But aside from that, you know, people tend to blame the economy a lot of times. I know this is something you write about in the book. People tend to blame the economy when things start going south, And is that a legitimate stance to take?
No. Whenever you blame the economy, you're slitting your own financial throat. It's like you're tying your own noose and you're basically hanging yourself. Because, anytime you blame others, then you're being a victim and you're not taking responsibility for yourself. There's a big shift in this book, and that is we got to quit being employer reliant and start looking at it and start becoming self-reliant. What people don't really recognize is there's two economies. Now, I'm sure you've heard the serenity prayer, which is God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, we need to recognize that there's two economies. One's called the macro economy, which is all that stuff in Washington that we don't have any control of. Tax rates or tax incentives or job credits, all that stuff. But then there's another economy called the microeconomy, and this is the one that's actually pretty exciting for people that are on the line, that are entrepreneurs, that are wannabe entrepreneurs. And the microeconomy says that you are only one sales transaction away from improving your personal economy. Every time you get the cash register to ring, your economy improves. When I hear somebody say that the economy is bad, I hear something different than most people. When I'm in a conversation with somebody and say the economy is bad, what I personally hear is my sales and marketing process isn't working. Because if their sales and marketing process was working and their cash register was ringing, they would be saying the economy is great. You think anybody at Apple Computer right now is saying, oh, the economy is bad? I don't think so. So there is an epidemic of blame going on right now, and we need to quit blaming others and start looking in the mirror and say, how can I improve my personal economy?
I like that. Mark Aitken, a longtime member and also a coaching client in Wilmington, Delaware, runs a company called Horizon Services. And throughout the years of the recession, this current recession, he has grown at double-digit rates every single year. When he first started with me in the early 2000s, probably about 10 years ago now, he was a $5 million company, had already grown the company from less than $1 million in a fairly short period of time, engaged our services and went through the coaching program. He's now a $35 million company, is one of the sponsors of the Philadelphia Phillies. If you go to the Phillies ballpark, interestingly enough, I'm heading for Philadelphia later on this afternoon, but if you go to the Phillies ballpark and look out at center field, the scoreboard is sponsored by Horizon Services, a big orange sign out there that's his. They've done so well, and they haven't done this by competing on price. They're probably the highest price service company in their marketplace, but he is hired. He pays better than anybody else, and his business has just thrived. Now, if that was a lone incident among our group of members and coaching clients, I would be, I wouldn't brag about it so much. But the fact of the matter is, we have jewelers all over the country that have experienced anywhere from 20 to 36% growth in a year. Some of them seeing their incomes during the holiday season jump by 56%. This compared to a macro economy where things are improving, but they were up 5 or 5.6%. So I've got people who are exceeding that by a factor of 10 times. You cannot just say they're lucky, not when there's as many of them as there are. You're exactly right. It's taking personal responsibility. I call it refusing to participate in the recession or the downturn economic times and taking control of your own destiny despite whatever else is happening in the economy, and I think that you're talking about that. Joe, the bulk of your book is focused on a collection of 21 spirit killers and 21 spirit builders, which are the antidote, I guess, for each of the spirit killers. I want to talk the bulk of the rest of our time. We have about a half an hour left before I want to open up for questions. But I want to spend most of the time talking about some of those 21 spirit killers and spirit builders, because I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. I don't know which ones you think are the most important to address, so why don't we kind of give you that kind of flexibility and talk about maybe a half a dozen of them, or as many as you can fit in that half-hour period of time. And don't forget the fact that, you know, most of the people on the line are business owners who aren't in the job market in the traditional sense of the word, but are looking to build their enterprise through smarter and better marketing.
Okay. So one of them I like to talk about, I don't even know what number it is, but one of the spirit killers is that we don't have the right skills. And I believe that, first of all, I believe children are born as geniuses and then conditioned into mediocrity. I believe we're actually all born as salespeople. We're all born as persuaders. And then society actually kind of scares us that we don't have what it takes. Let me give you an example. I know, Jim, you've got children, and
I've been pretty good at that.
Yeah, and you know, when your kids are growing up, kids learn very, very quickly that if they want a candy bar or a cookie, you know, you might tell them, they might ask you 10 or 11 times, and you say no 10 or 11 times, but at some point they can actually wear you out. You know, Daddy, can I have some candy? And you say no, but eventually, at some point, you just say, okay, and you give them the candy. Well, that's persuasion in action. That's actually salesmanship at a childlike level. And everybody has that ability to ask and persuade their parents. And then something happens to us along the way where instead of asking our parents for the sale, we are sent out into the world to go talk to total strangers. And what happens is we don't get prepared for that. And it looks something like Girl Scout cookies or raising money for soccer uniforms. And the child goes out into the world and says, you want to buy some candy? And they hear no. And then they ask somebody else, would you like to buy some candy? And they say no. And after they get rejected 5, 10, 15, 20 times, if they last that long, they start to say, wow, this thing called sales sucks. And then they kind of get some belief into them that they start doing some self-talk, like, I never want to have anything to do with sales for the rest of my life. And sending a child out to go and sell without proper sales training, I call it an entrepreneurial crime against children. I've even coined a term. It's called transactophobia. Transactophobia is that fear of having to do with sales or asking people to buy, and it starts at a very young age. And it's not a genetic condition, because like I said, children are born as geniuses and conditioned into mediocrity. It's actually conditioned into them by sending them out in the world without proper training. And so the cure would be to learn the skills of what it takes to succeed in sales and marketing. And you know, these are, of course, are some of the things that are in the Principle-Centered Marketing Coaching Program. Learning how to sell, learning how to write a sales letter, learning direct mail, learning guaranteed. All of these principles that are taught in the Principle-Centered Marketing Coaching Program are skills that are they're principles. It's like the law of gravity. If you drop something, it falls 100% of the time. And just like that, there are tested, proven principles in marketing And if we teach kids, if we teach teenagers, if we teach young adults and old adults, if you're playing within the realm of principles, you can and will succeed. And that's the spirit builder.
You know, I want to point out one thing about you said. I think Joe's point is extremely well taken. Sometimes we don't have the right skills, and of course, you guys get involved with the Marketing Wizards Alliance to cultivate those skills. But the first thing that Joe talked about there was a child's ability to ask, and not just to ask, but to ask persistently. And, you know, the timing is really good because today, out into the mail will go your jumbo issue of the newsletter that's focused on offers, which is talking specifically about how to ask. And you will find that there are 60 categories of offers that I'll be talking about in the newsletter there, and also distinctions about why we should ask and different purposes for asking and those kinds of things. And those of you who are in the middle of the coaching program are going to run across this again. I try to put it into the newsletter once every about 3 years to talk about offers and review this because it's so vitally important. But Joe's point is one of the keys is to ask persistently and not be willing to take no for an answer. And one of the things we talk about is asking frequently. And there is a difference between asking persistently and asking frequently, but you can categorize that as a skill. The skill, the courage, the persistence, the tenacity to ask on a consistent basis may be one of the greatest keys to marketing success that there is. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, and it's not only asking and asking persistently, but it's asking with the belief that you can get your desired outcome, and a child will adjust until they get what they want. So it's not just asking, but it's having a belief that I can get that outcome, and if what I'm doing isn't working, I will adjust and try something. At some level, it's a primitive form of testing.
That's a good point. Good point.
Okay, another one of the spirit killers is, believe it or not, this is one, as a coach, I've seen this a lot, and you could probably confirm or deny this, Jim, but this idea of focus. Focus is something that everybody thinks, well, all it takes to succeed is focus, focus, focus. But what you pay attention to determines what you miss. Okay, and I believe that focus can be a spirit killer if you're focusing on the wrong approach.
Profound.
Okay, now if you focus on the tree, you'll miss the forest. Okay, true leadership is the ability to zoom out, get the big perspective of all the different methods and ways of the whole opportunity spectrum. And then, once you get the big perspective of the choice of which methods to go on, then you zoom in, focus on that, and get that done. After you complete something and you're effective with it, you can then zoom out and get perspective again. And so, this is a spirit killer when you're... And one of the ways this shows up is with the Internet. There's two perspectives. One is called this ad of the month club, the bright, shiny object. And we see this with the Internet so much. It's like, if I just get my Internet to work, my business will be successful. There's two ways to look at the Internet. One is to have an Internet business. The other is to have a business that uses the Internet. And I think it's just a huge, giant mistake. And I don't just think it. I absolutely have 100% certainty that if you use only the Internet as your only marketing tool, you are leaving a lot of cash off the table. Direct mail still works. Shaking a hand and selling face-to-face still works. Using public relations and getting in the media, radio, TV, magazines, newspapers, all that stuff still works. And focusing on just the Internet only or the next bright, shiny object and attaching to it. Wow, if I could just get postcards to work. Jim, would you like to verify or confirm or deny what I'm saying?
I'd absolutely like to verify. In fact, I thought it was very profound, the thought that what you focus on determines what you miss. You know, most of the time we talk about the idea of what you focus on determines what you get, and I think that's true, but it also does determine what you miss. There's that opportunity cost associated with it, and yes, you're exactly right. Too often we're either myopically focused on just one thing, or we may be focused on multiple things, but we're not focused. We're focused on the activity, not necessarily the correct activity. So whether it's focusing too much on, for example, making sure that our social media is doing what it's supposed to do, or whether it's focused on direct mail, but only on postcards versus doing a letter package as something to test it against, or simply taking anything and throwing it against the wall without testing. I think you're exactly right. That kind of focus can be, strangely enough, distracting.
Now I want to tie this in to the folks out there that most of the people on this call I know are business owners. And we need to be really careful. There's a difference between, doing marketing because some sales rep knocks on our door versus doing market because it's actually part of, we've written a marketing plan. And we've chosen, okay, I'm going to do trade shows. I'm going to do 2 shows this year or 4 shows this year and making my decision what shows they are. I believe that radio is the best medium for me. In other words, we can either consciously make a decision about what we go after in marketing, or we can kind of pay attention to who knocks on our door. The radio sales rep has one agenda. That's to sell radio. The search engine optimization guy has one agenda. It's to sell you search engine optimization. The yellow page person, most of the people in marketing, the graphic artist wants to sell you graphic art. Most people in marketing have this agenda to sell their product. And this is where, I think this is where the PCM coaching program is so different. Not to be a big sales pitch, but my agenda as a coach is not to sell a specific kind of marketing. My agenda as a coach is to find how can I get fast results for my client? How can I get sustaining results for my client? How can I get results? It's malpractice to give a prescription without a proper diagnosis first. And just because I meet somebody in a networking group and say I have some kind of a marketing program, I don't just do it because they're nice people. I have to weigh it in with my overall strategic plan and then make a decision as a general, not as a foot soldier. I have to be a general and treat my business as a true leader and make a decision what fits in and what would really, really, really work for my business. And so the spirit builder is to focus on things that do work using the proven methods. I have a quote in the book: low-tech effective is better than high-tech ineffective.
Amen.
And, with all the people today focusing so much on online marketing, and you got to trust me, I know quite a bit about technology marketing. I was building computers in high school electronics 2 years before DOS was out. I know a lot about technology, but I am currently positioned as an offline marketing expert. Not because I don't know about online, and I do online marketing, don't get me wrong. However, because so many people are focused on the online, they've forgotten that sometimes a handshake or just knocking on somebody's door is more effective. Tom Hopkins, he used to say something really funny. He said an email can be deleted, and a fax can be thrown away, and a letter can be thrown away, and you can hang up on a phone call. But the hardest thing to get rid of? A body. showing up at somebody's doorstep, shaking their hand, looking at their eye, shaking their hand, hugging them, feeling their energy is more powerful, more impactful, more effective than so many other marketing. And I also have to say this: if you can't sell face-to-face, you're going to have a hard time selling online.
Yeah, I think that's really true. You get, in fact, if you can't sell face-to-face, you got challenges with doing almost any other kind of marketing. My experience with ad agencies has been that the copywriters who live and work at ad agencies very seldom have had much by way of face-to-face sales experience. And, the great David Ogilvy, and some of you on the line know who David Ogilvy is. Some of you don't, but he's known as the father of modern image advertising, and that would not, what you know about me, you would think I wouldn't have much respect for a guy who's not known as a direct response guy. But David Ogilvy is actually my marketing and advertising hero. It's his work that first got me into the world of marketing and advertising. And he was very much, despite what he was, the name he was saddled with, he was very much focused on direct response marketing, and it was his belief that the people that worked for him should have face-to-face sales experience and know, what it was to talk to a customer and what their concerns were and those kinds of things if they thought they were going to work in his realm. And the good news for all of us that are on the call, as I'm looking at the names here, all of us have that experience. All of us have been in the trenches, have had to look a prospect straight in the eye and ask that closing question, and I think that's incredibly valuable and something that you can and perhaps should consider making a bit of a criteria for anybody who works with and for you, because the implications in terms of my favorite subject, a lifetime profit value of a customer, are profound, even if they're not in a sales position. I went with my family, my oldest son and his 5 children and wife, and one of my middle sons and his wife and child. They invited us to go to dinner with them at Red Robin the other night, and Red Robin is a national chain, but I'd never been to one before. And I went in there, and the line was incredibly long. There was allegedly a half-hour wait. We lucked out in that somebody else who had a party of 12 had bailed, and so we got their seat fairly early. But I could not believe the quality level of service that we received at Red Robin. They came by and said, because you've got a large group, we're going to give you some complimentary appetizers. And it just wasn't one bit. They just kept bringing them and bringing them and bringing them. My wife is celiac. They knew what that was. They had a gluten-free menu. Everybody on the staff was trained on what that was all about and how to deal with it. The level of service was, nonpareil. And it was not that that those people were all in a sales position, but the net effect of the whole thing was I was so affected by it, and I called the manager over, told him what a tremendous experience that we had, and told them that I was going to write it up in my next column, which will appear in the Enterprise here in Salt Lake, but also will appear on my blog and those kinds of things. So Joe's exactly right. The ability to understand what a customer goes through and what you go through as a salesperson can have a tremendous impact on every facet of your business.
Let me jump into the next spirit killer. And for those that have the book, it's on page 87. And it's the fear of risk. Now, I know I'm speaking to a group of entrepreneurs here, and we all pride ourselves on being risk takers. Let me just read this little quote from Joe Sugarman. Not many people are willing to give failure a second opportunity. They fail, and it's all over. The bitter pill of failure, it's often more than most people can handle. If you're willing to accept failure and learn from it, if you're willing to accept failure as a blessing in disguise and bounce back, you've got the potential of harnessing one of the most powerful success forces. Now, I know that the people on this call are business owners. I know that they take their pride in the fact that they've been risk takers. I know that they found they wouldn't be in business if they've taken some risks and they found some things that work. But let me be a little bit in your face and say that there are other things that you could be doing that you might be reluctant to take the risk on. So, for example, whatever business you're in, you found a formula that works. But doing a new marketing method that you're not currently doing will be probably outside of your comfort zone. And maybe one of the reasons that you have not gone to the next level in your business is because you're comfortable with what's working and you're not willing to take the risk and be flexible to try some new methods. And if you take the risk, if you try some new things, you can get some breakthroughs. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, this again is a tremendous profundity, if you ask me, gang, because every one of us took a major risk to get into business for ourselves, and yet I made the observation a number of years ago as I was taking out a booth in these business-to-business expos that go around from time to time. You know, the local Chamber of Commerce puts on a business-to-business expo. And the attendees would go to these expos, and the same thing happens with trade shows an awful lot. You put a booth in these expos or these trade shows, and people walk by and kind of glance at you, and it's almost like they're afraid they're going to get sold something, so they won't even come talk to you, kind of a thing. Now, this is as an exhibitor, I can appreciate that. You know, I don't like it, but I can appreciate what's going through people's mind. And yet, when it comes to this marketing thing, what I've found over years, and really I know I'm preaching to the choir because you guys have already taken that second risk in being involved in the Marketing Wizards Alliance or else our coaching program or both. But the point of the matter is, you have to, the bigger risk is to take no risk. The bigger risk is to ignore things. The bigger risk is to say, okay, I already rolled the dice once, and I'm here. I've opened my doors, and we're kind of tooling along here at some certain level. But I don't want to take another risk by, as Joe pointed out, trying a different marketing approach, engaging in, bringing in the kind of help that might enable me to take my business to the next level. It's going to cost money. It's going to cost time. Gee whiz. And we're thinking of those things instead of, what is the potential upside? What if I could get an exponential growth opportunity out of this? And this coaching program is $7,800, but gee whiz, if I could do that and increase my overall enterprise by 10%, wouldn't that be well worth it? What if I could do it by 20%? Small price to pay. And of course, that's a self-serving thing, but it could be anything from a software investment, or maybe it's hiring that extra person, or having the courage to say, you know what, I need a sales manager at this point in time. There's any number of things that it could be where we're afraid to take that next risk. And as entrepreneurs, as Joe points out, I think it's important to, we've already taken the first risk. Failure to take the next level of risk, commit to the next level of risk, may be what's holding us back. And maybe even causing, is what causes business failures as much as anything else. In fact, I'm convinced that it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the risks, I say that playing it safe is probably the biggest risk of all. But one of the risks that we're often averse to is rolling out the next test. You know, whatever you're doing, try something new. Try something new. You know, it's so easy for us to get into a pattern of using the time-tested, proven stuff, and obviously if it's working, we need to keep doing it. But, you know, the reluctance to test, that's a risk. And yet, as you know, Jim, and running a test doesn't have to be expensive. You know, testing a different headline, changing your ad a little bit, changing your offer a little bit, can mean a profound impact at the cash register. Like you said, Jim, the trade shows. People are walking by your booth and they're afraid that you're going to sell them something. So take a risk and come up with a script. I have a client that she had a booth selling things to the quilting industry. And people were walking by, want to see how to put your photos on fabric. And people would walk by because they were afraid of the sale. And I came up with a little script. What we have here is the easiest way for you to put photos on fabric. Would you like to see how it works? And, you know, Jim, as you know, curiosity, all three of the headline important components. One is curiosity, the second is self-interest, and the third was newsworthiness. I didn't know that I could put my photos on fabric. That's newsworthy. Here's the easiest way for you to put your photos on fabric. Well, that's self-interest. And curiosity, well, what is it? What is the easiest way for me to put my photos on fabric? So what we found is that by using that script and being a broken record with it, we were able to hook a huge number of people into watching the demo, and then tying that in with a special upsell offer, we were able to get the average transaction up from $20 per transaction up into the neighborhood of about $75 per transaction. And having more transactions because more people were watching the demo.
Excellent.
Okay.
You have another one?
Yeah. The next one, for those that have the book, is on page 91, and that is low self-image. And it's not necessarily low self-image. Let me read this quote. Whenever your reality gets ahead of your self-image, one of two things can happen. Your self-image can stretch to accept your new reality, or your reality will snap back behind your old self-image. Okay. Now, well, I'll give a couple of examples of this to bring some light. And if somebody has a job as a line worker, they have the reality of line worker and the mentality of line worker. Then one day they get promoted to being a manager. One of two things can happen. They have this new reality of being a manager, but if their self-image is that of line worker, then what will happen is one of two things. They will either, their self-image will start to see themselves as a manager that will match the reality of their new position, or if they don't, then their reality will snap back behind their old self-image and end up back on the assembly line. For entrepreneurs, especially people that transition from having a job into being a business owner, if you had a reality of having a job and a mentality of having a job, and now you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner, if you continue to think like an employee, well, I can just punch a clock from 9 to 5, and then I can go party on the weekends, and then when I come back, everything will be fine and dandy. Okay? If you continue to think like an employee, you will end up back being an employee. Your business will not succeed. However, if you start a business and you start to think not like an employee anymore, but you truly start to embody this idea of being an entrepreneur, that you're not entitled to a paycheck, that the paycheck is earned, if you start to realize that I don't have a business part of my life and a personal part of my life, but I just have a life that incorporates both business and personal things, and they all have to work together, then you have a much higher chance of succeeding. And so it's very important that our self-image is in alignment with being an entrepreneur 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I like that there's several people on the line who I know have already made that shift in thinking, but there's some that are in the process of going from business owner to entrepreneur and making, frankly, some courageous choices in terms of systemizing their business and getting down to the nitty-gritty, disciplined work that it takes to do that. And I agree with you. I think it's an interesting phenomenon that as you do the work, your self-image changes, and as your self-image changes, you're more willing to do that kind of work. Does that make sense? So I think that's good. Look, we've got just a couple of minutes left, Joe. Give us one really practical, marketing-oriented, either spirit killer or builder or tip that you would, leave us with before we open it up for questions. And the other thing that we want to do is make sure that everybody online knows how they can get your book. So let's go there first. Let's have you give us one final tip. Then tell us how to get your book. Then it'll open it up for questions, and then we'll wrap it with you telling us how to get your book again.
Okay. So, we've heard this idea that, in sales we need to learn how to accept rejection. You got to learn to ask a lot of questions, and rejection is part of the sales process. But not only do we need to learn how to accept rejection, but we need to learn how to reject acceptance. And what this means is we got to stop hanging around with these people that just tell us no all day long, but they can't cut us a check. Okay? And I have become mercenary about this, that it's like, are you capable of cutting me a check? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, it's like, well, who is and how do I get to them? And I don't want to waste time with those people that can't cut me a check. So we really need to get into this, reject acceptance. There's a bunch of people that can tell us no all day long, and they're really not in the position to be a decision maker. Who is the economic buyer? Who is the guy that cuts the check? Who is the guy that approves this? And not waste your time with everybody else. Very easy to go to various referral groups or networking groups, and they have these breakfast meetings. And some of them can be very productive. I don't want to, say that method doesn't work, because it can actually work splendidly well. But we need to be really careful that we're not going to these things that they degrade into what's called a social club and not a business environment. And so you want to surround yourself with people that can cut you checks. And that would be
I think in the world, in the advertising sense, that has to do with going to the right list as well. And at the very top, this provides a good wrap up to this part of the session. Is at the very top you said you talked about going back to your existing customers and asking them to buy again. Is that not hanging with the right crowd? If they've already bought one thing from you, the odds that they'll buy something again are extremely high. Why wouldn't we be going to that group as a priority compared to others? So I think that the people who've already written you a check can write you another one. I think that's profound. And then the second issue would be, who else can write us a check? From a individual sales point of view, that's individual people. From a marketing perspective, that is, what other lists can we approach? Obviously the ideal list is to get our competitors' list. That's kind of difficult to do, but what about other people who have our same kind of customer, but we just haven't met those people yet? So that's where the idea of guest host joint ventures comes to play. All these kinds of things are possibilities. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, birds of a feather flock together, and some people you just don't want to flock with. I have a sales technique. I want to give something really nuts and bolts. I have some expectations when I deal with people, and I teach this to my clients as well. And one of them is I have an expectation that they will refer people to me, and they will give me testimonials, and they will be ongoing, continuous customers as long as I add value to their life and their business. And so, really nuts and bolts, we want to ask for referrals, and if we are dealing with people that can cut us checks, guess what? They know other people that can cut us checks. And so the nuts and bolts sales technique is before the sale. I use this as a sales benefit or reason why you should do business with me, and is I want you to be so happy that three things will happen. Number one, you'll want to continue working with me. Number two, you will give me referrals. Okay, you will share me with other people that are like-minded, that are economic buyers that can cut me a check. And thirdly is I want you to be so happy that you'll give me a glowing video testimonial. And so that's a nuts and bolts sales technique to bring that to life, that we want to hang out with people that can cut us checks, and we want to get referrals from that. And we want it to be part of our sales process before the sale, during the sale, and after the sale.
Terrific. How do we get your book?
The book, Resurrecting America's Entrepreneurial Spirit, is available on Amazon.com. You can ask for it in bookstores. Most of them aren't carrying it yet. I think it's going to go bestseller. But you can go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, and it's also available from my publisher at AuthorHouse.com. And if you want to get a personal signed copy, you can get it from go to RapidResultsMarketing.com. My phone number's there. Give me a call, and we'll make arrangements for you to pay me and get me to send you out a signed copy of the book.
Terrific. Thanks so much. Anybody have any questions for Joe at this point in time? No wheels are turning out there? Joe, let me ask one question for the average entrepreneur out there. What is the first thing that they should do in re-engineering their marketing systems, in your opinion?
The number one determining factor of success, according to Napoleon Hill, and I agree with him, is definiteness of purpose. Getting crystal clear on the bullseye, what the bullseye looks like. Now, the world changes, but sometimes we don't change as quickly as the world does. So I think it's very important to reevaluate the bullseye, reevaluate the marketplace. There's a story from Gary Halbert. He had a room full of brilliant marketers, and he asked them all, if you had a restaurant and you had one advantage over all other advantages, what would it be? And one person said location. And he said, yeah, that's good. And then another person said, I'd have the best chef. Okay, that's good. Another person said ambience. I'd have a comfortable environment. Okay, that's good. Customer service. So all these ideas were very good. And yet, Gary Halbert said, okay, those are all good, but here's what if I had a restaurant, I had one advantage over all others, I would have a starving crowd. And if you have a starving crowd, people will not worry about your location. They will go the road less traveled to get there. If you have a starving crowd, they don't care if you're serving steaks or hot dogs, they will buy from you. If you have a starving crowd, you can even be rude to people and they will buy from you. And so to re-engineer your business, it's like, what are people really, really hungry for right now? What are people really starving for? How can I really appeal to the underlying emotional craving of what they really want? And it's not always easy to get to that. But if I was to take somebody who has a business, I would be fine-tuning it and get to understand my customer at a deeper level so that I could really be appealing to what they're really starving for.
Terrific. All right, one more time then, how do we get the book?
RapidResultsMarketing.com. There's a link to my to Author House or Amazon.com. It's Resurrecting America's Entrepreneurial Spirit. It's a practical approach for creating jobs, especially your own.
Terrific.
And again,
very
my name
nicely
is
done, Joe. Nice book. It's an engaging book and very easy read. It's very conversational in tone. I think everybody would enjoy it. Appreciate your participation here today, as always. And then a quick call to action for those of you who are on the line. Hey, if you are not subscribed to my YouTube channels, you really should do that. The two YouTube channels are youtube.com/marketing speaker Jim A. And don't be deceived by that. It's not all about me as a marketing speaker. It's the basic thrust of that channel is a marketing tip of the day. It doesn't come out every day, but there's regularly I post video marketing tips there. The other channel that I really want you to subscribe to is youtube.com/good, bad, and ugly ads. That's good, bad, the letter N as in Nancy, then ugly ads. Good, bad, and ugly ads. All right. There we take a much more detailed approach. The average presentation is probably 7 minutes long. We take a look at an advertising campaign and critique it. And then we give you a second ad campaign for you to critique and to participate in and send in your comments on what you think works or doesn't work about that campaign. And then within the following couple of weeks, we go back again with a new episode where we revisit the one that you had a chance to comment on and give you another one to comment on the following week. It's interactive. It's a two-way channel. And it's also a place where you can submit your own ads that you want to critique, and then I'll critique them as well and put it out to the rest of the group. So it's much more interactive. We'd like you to participate in that as well. Once again, it's youtube.com/good, bad, and ugly ads. Go there and subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll just receive a notification in your email whenever a new post is made. So it's only intrusive when there's something to see. And I highly recommend, in fact, I request that you do that and take advantage of it and help me build that subscriber base, because the more participants there are, the better, the broader scope of ads we can take a look at, and the better it is for everybody. All right, gang, that's it for this monthly marketing meeting. We'll look forward to talking to you in a couple of weeks in the first week of May. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, Wednesday of this week is free call-in day. So call in on my cell phone this week if you want to take advantage of the free call-in day. The number is 801-918-4117. It's necessary to call the cell because I will be on the road. But Wednesday is a travel and off day for me. I am not in an airplane, so I will be able to talk to you. And that is the number to call, 801-918-4117. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye, everybody.